Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today we've got the final video in our Watch It Wednesday series looking at the probably 1999 footage done at the Bremerton Navy Yard of the ship before she's turned over to the state of New Jersey. So this is the last bit of the footage that we were able to recover. At the end of this video, we'll be able to talk some more about what we saw and what we didn't see in this footage. It's possible that some of it was so deteriorated that we don't have it anymore, or that we're missing a VHS or something else. But it seems like in these 20-minute segments we've been watching, it just hasn't added up to every single compartment. But this is a survey of the compartments before it's turned over to the museum. This next one is going to have, I haven't watched it yet, but I've been told it's got some footage going down second deck from the machine shop to the galley spaces and finally to mess deck, where I'm told they stored a bunch of stuff. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. And then at the end, we'll talk about what's missing. So for those of you who haven't been watching these, it's kind of Blair Witch shaky. There's a guy with a shoulder-mounted camera walking around the ship, turning at whatever he looks at. So just a little advisory. It might make you feel sick if you're watching it. Otherwise, this is the 9th and final one. There's a link in the description below to the playlist that shows the other 8 volumes we've previously done. They aren't in any particular order. We're not entirely sure what order the spaces were originally in, so we just sort of put them up in the order of scenes that we found them. So if you watch this one and go back and watch the other ones, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. But let's get into this. Okay. All right, so here we are in one of the uptakes near the machine shop where they store all the spare stock. There's the armored grating over an intake. There's another armored grating over an intake. There's the spare stock for the machine shop. The Navy did not remove any of this when the ship was taken out of service. So the museum still uses all this stuff. Some spare gearing and other things. I bet all that's engineering spares, but I don't recognize the individual parts. Here we are going aft on second deck. This is a head, a crew's washroom. Looks to be in pretty good shape. Shoring timber still on the racks. Well, that's interesting. It is all wired up together, which they did a lot with stuff when the ship was going to be moved. It seems like somebody at the museum removed those wires because they're not there anymore. All right, where are we now? Air handling unit partially disassembled. Some desks. Do not lick the white powder you find on the ship. Manual is still in place. We're on second deck, and that's looking through the holding bulkhead at the shell plating, but I don't recognize this space. I wonder if it's been altered by the museum. This could be the log office. You know, the log office on the port side of second deck was gutted by the museum to turn into a sail locker. And I bet that's what we're looking at right now, which I've never seen in its original configuration. This is where all the ship's plans would have been, and so they could have pulled stuff to look. We've got some berthing areas here, which is what you would see going down the side of second deck. We've since gotten mattresses for all of these bunks, and we're still in the process of getting blankets for all of them. Almost all of them on the tour route have them, but we're still getting blankets and pillows and things to fit out the whole ship. You can see that they're not on here as decommissioned. You can see that all the accesses into the shell plating have been opened up for dehumidification. In combat, those manholes would all be sealed. Not just combat, but normal sailing operations. But in mothballs, they're all opened up to ventilate those spaces. It's interesting Somebody brought one of the chairs from Dental in here. It's probably their hiding spot. There's a dredger hoist in front of us for one of the 5-inch shells, or from a 5-inch magazine to a 5-inch upper handling room. Berthing space. We're on the starboard side of second deck looking outboard right now, with aft to the right and forward to the left. There's a crew washroom here to the left with another dredger hoist going through it. I recognize that space. Interesting, these bunks are still here. Some of those bunks have been removed by the museum, and I'm not sure why. Right now we just store nuts and bolts in there. Oh, okay. This is a little workshop space near there. Behind those sheet metal sheets are just shelves that are filled with dogs for the doors and spare equipment. I wonder if it's a DC workshop. We still use that as such. And the equipment and the manuals are still in there. Haven't gotten to cleaning that out yet. Another berthing space. I think we'll have ended up seeing all 1,600 bunks on board by the end of this. This is where you come up from Broadway at the aft end of the machine shop. This is the hall technician shop to the right that they aren't really panning up to. And that's that uptake with the spare stock in it that we looked at earlier. And we're back inside. See what I meant earlier about this jumping around? Some of the spares in crates. I wonder if I'll open a crate and let us look inside. Looks like they're strapped down. I have to say, the crew in 1990-91 put this ship to bed clean. Like, this is an uptake space. It should be a god-awful mess. With the exception of a little bit of flaking paint, it looks pretty pristine to me. Can't give enough credit to the ship's crew and the yard workers who got this ship ready for mothballs. All right, we are in the hall technician shop right now. This is another space that the museum still uses. You can see that all the shelves are still filled with equipment and or parts, I should say, and the equipment in here all still could be made to work, so we still use it. Oh, interesting that the bead blaster is in here in the hall technician shop. We haven't moved over to the power shop to be used. The weld shop is only used by staff right now. The rest of the machine shop is also used by volunteers. So I guess that's why they moved it. We're continuing from the starboard side across to the port side. Here's the power shop.
What's your location?
That's a burnout oven right there that you barely got to see. There's a workbench on the other side. It's a baking oven to the left for baking the varnish onto newly wound motors. Interesting. Some of the equipment placements in there have been reinterpreted by the museum. It's interesting to see how it was when we got the ship. We might work to return that to normal. I think we just jumped to the log office again. This is really weird how it's jumping back and forth to the same couple of spaces. Not quite sure what the cameraman's trying to look at here. I would have expected to see more drawers in the log office for holding the various blueprints, although it might have just been microfiche at the end of the ship's career. So at least it doesn't look like we stripped too much equipment out of there. I don't recognize this stateroom. Oh, that might have been the Senior Chief's office, or the Command Master Chief's office, which has been gutted for air conditioning equipment. I wonder what happened to the stuff that was in there. Alright, we're looking at another berthing space. We did a hard cut over here. Not quite sure which one. They all look the same. Okay, now we did another hard cut to an office space. Is that rubberized linoleum on the deck? There might have been electronics in here before. Oh, there's the carpentry shop. There's a little office here to the right. There's some sailor art of a toilet that is still in place, 100% intact. Notice some of the lumber is still sitting on the racks in the carpentry shop, showing you the condition that the ship was put away in, ready to be reactivated. I think this is the galley chief's office, just because that's close. Or no, there's an office in the back of the carpentry shop that I bet that was. It's so filled with junk today, I've hardly seen it. More racks. Look at how those lockers are put in place around the curve of the side of the ship there. That holding bulkhead has probably the same 19-degree angle as the armored belt outboard of it. All right, we're heading towards the serving line now. Now we're heading inboard towards the center of the ship where the ship's bakery is. This is the bakery. Got your sinks, your ovens, your mixing bowls. Not quite up to code today because you're supposed to have a separate hand washing sink in addition to the 3 sinks for doing dishes. This is where the baked bread would then be set out to cool on the racks. This is the galley chief's office. I'm happy to see that there isn't much in there. That means that it wasn't the museum that gutted that space. Interesting. What's all that stuff at the stacked up under the chow handling line? I don't recognize it. Oh, it might be shoring timber. Wonder why all that shoring timber is stacked up under the chow line. Another office space backed by the galley. This is the vegetable prep room, if I'm not mistaken. Interesting. This space also appears to have been emptied. It's interesting that we go from one space that's pristine with all of its equipment to another one that's you've just got the mounting points. Ooh, not sure what this guy's doing with the camera right now. Okay, so here is the galley. The steam kettles around the barbette for turret 3 at the aft end. The warming trays, the Hobart mixer. There's your range. Got your actual ovens here. Now we're about amidships, heading from the starboard side to the port side of the galley. There's another chow line over on this side. Oh, we got a Bigfoot sighting. Exiting the galley at this point. There's another ladder down to Broadway. It's interesting seeing these counters with their original equipment on them. The museum removed a lot of the drink machines and other equipment to make those counters flat for food handling, but the mounting holes are still there, and the equipment is in the, there's a nice coffee machine, is in some tanks near the mess deck. So it's interesting to see where that equipment was, what went where. Got some alarm panels there. This room is used by our encampment program for making dog tags. Here's one of the dehumidification machines. They basically brought it down the ladder and then welded it to the deck and ran the hoses wherever they needed to go. This former office space no longer exists. It got turned into an air conditioning room. Oh, excuse me. That's this office going aft here. That space is used as storage for the store, which is more or less what it was used for in service. Canned goods storage. This is probably the space I'm thinking of that got gutted for air conditioning, because I don't recognize all those file cabinets and things. This is the deck in the butcher shop. It's the bandsaw for cutting meat. Passing port to the galley. A ground beef thing. Meat grinder is the word for that. Here's another uptake. You can see the armored grating. Oh yeah, we're at the incinerator now, which is roughly amidships, right by the butcher shop. This is the former Marine small arms locker that's near the incinerator. Marine Corps berthing is right at the bottom of the ladder here. So as the Marines are coming up when they're called, the first two people up the ladder get handed a shotgun, and one runs to each gangway. And then everyone else up the ladder gets their regular M16s or M60s or whichever loadouts that they normally carry, and then they form into their squads and go and respond to whatever is needed. This is probably a scullery. Although the camera's jumping around so much, I can't really tell what I'm looking at. Oh, we're back in that room with the cabinets. I don't know who edited this video together. Okay, we got some mess deck chairs stacked up, wired up. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is a void space off of the mess decks. The one where we currently have the equipment that was removed from those counters. There's a lot of access through here down into tanks. It seems to have been used mostly as storage or workshop space. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting pretty seasick here. It's a lot of tough stuff to step over all these knee knockers and things. I don't recognize most of this equipment that's wired up here. All right, we're on the mess decks. Notice that a lot of the tiling isn't in place and none of the tables and chairs are set up. I'm not sure what that big... Oh, those might be the bloomers for the 16-inch guns hanging in the overhead. We were always told they were found in the wardroom, but it looks like they're down here in the mess decks. There's the case that's still there, the trophy case. And look at all these boxes of stuff. Obviously, none of these are still on the mess deck, so they've almost certainly all been opened and distributed back to where they were taken. Some of the boxes, I've been told, are labeled Missouri, and some of them are labeled New Jersey. These are the two West Coast battleships. They sat in Bremerton side by side. So they might have just put all of the stuff in one ship for whatever reason, all the spare parts. So it is possible that the Navy took some of this stuff back to redistribute between the battleships or to retain in spare parts for Iowa and Wisconsin, which were kept in service, or in reserves, I should say, a little bit longer than the other two. But clearly they didn't take everything. If those are, in fact, our bloomers, and probably some of these boxes contain our missing mess deck tables, which you can see are not attached, which means that the museum had to reattach all that. I'm not allowed to show footage of the inside of Charleston, which is a ship that has all the Iowa spare parts in it here at the Philadelphia Navy Yard. There you see 63 stenciled on it from Missouri. But the inside of Charleston is very similar to this. Just stacks upon stacks of tri-wall boxes and wooden crates like this with all the battleship spare parts. It is possible that some of the spare parts are taken from us here. Like these pieces that are part of the auxiliary diesel generators. Those are on Charleston. Those are on Charleston. So they took the spares off of our mess decks. They took New Jersey from Bremerton to Philadelphia, pulled the spares off of our mess decks, and they ended up on Charleston. And now they're going to get scrapped with that ship when she's sold. Here we are in one of the other wings going off of the mess deck. See some office chairs and some shelving back here. Look at the condition of this space, though. This is not climate controlled. It's just a storage area off of the mess decks, but look at how good a condition it's in. You get all the way to the back and you see some stuff that's been primed but not painted. I bet if I went through my pictures from Charleston and matched it to some of the numbers on these crates and some of the loose equipment, that almost all of it would be a match from what was removed from this ship. So, that is the end of what we have in this footage. Ending in a big note with that mess deck stuff, I didn't realize that the stuff on Charleston had been on this vessel, and they spent tax money to remove it, only to then send it to the scrappers. There's a link in the description below to a video we talked about Charleston a little bit earlier on. The Navy has opened Charleston on at least 2 occasions for museum ships to get on board and take spare parts off of. But for large crates like those, they were unable to open the cargo holds and let us crane big stuff out, so it is still on there. We were only able to take what we could carry off ourselves in the handful of days we were given. So, this being the end of the footage, it was very interesting. Not once did we get into a magazine space or a gun house. We didn't get into any of the 16-inch gun houses, any of the 5-inch gun houses. Part of that seems to be they aren't doing main deck access areas. They're just going around through the inside of the ship. So the turrets are only accessible via vertical ladders, and maybe this guy didn't want to climb up them with the camera, or maybe they're intentionally not showing weapons. Like I said, the magazines are all accessible off of Broadway, and they don't go into any of them. We saw one magazine door that had a chain and a lock on it, but we know that that magazine is filled with a bunch of the deck equipment that had been removed from elsewhere on the ship. So that's probably why it was locked up, not because it was an empty magazine space, but that was just one magazine. The other 3 5-inch magazines and all the 16-inch magazines were empty, and they didn't go to any of those. But they didn't go to a lot of spaces that were only accessible by vertical ladders. So it could be that we're missing footage, or it could be that they just decided, while holding the big 90s camcorder, they decided, let's not do that. Yeah, so some other areas we didn't see that leads me to believe that there's still some footage that we don't have. A lot of the main deck berthing areas, we went through 1 or 2 of them, but it seems like the entire starboard side and much of the forward port side, we just didn't get to see. The magazines and guns, like I said, and the engineering spaces. I could see at least 3 separate engine rooms, but I couldn't say for certain that we ever got into all 4 fire rooms and engine rooms. If I remember correctly, in an earlier video, we got into forward diesel, but we never got into aft diesel, which does have regular ladder access. Ladder as in stairs, not like a vertical ladder access. So he could have gone down there, and we didn't see that footage. Over the 9 weeks I've been watching this, I can't quite remember. It might be aft diesel that we saw and forward diesel, plot, and CIC that we missed, which again has regular ladder access. It just seems like they didn't get there, or we don't have the footage. Also, we don't get any footage from the shaft alleys, which would be something I would be extremely interested in seeing. But those are only accessible by vertical ladders. And like we said, it doesn't look like they went anywhere vertical ladder accessible. What are some spaces that you think we should have seen that we didn't? Let us know in the comment section down below. We will keep looking for more footage and see if we can't recover more off of the original tapes. VHS tapes tend to last about 20 years before the film goes bad. This is filmed a little over 20 years ago. DVDs that we copied over to, or hard drives that we copied over to tend to last about 10 years before they fail. So we're going to definitely make it an effort as the curatorial department on the Battleship to keep this saved in multiple places and keep updating it as the hard drives that it's on, the flash drives, whatever else, the DVDs, are expected to deteriorate, so we don't lose more footage if that is in fact what happened, why we're missing stuff. Or again, it could just be that they didn't get places. So, Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to continue supporting us. You can also support the museum by liking, sharing, subscribing so more people find out about the channel and the museum. Thanks for watching.